Hi, in today's episode, I wanted to offer you some suggestions on how to practice the left hand tremolo in Pathetique Sonata on the second page. So this one here. It is a section that very often prevents particularly younger pianists from playing this sonata. They might be very skilled and they might feel relatively comfortable playing the entire piece, except for those sections, particularly those a little bit longer ones in bars 199 and so forth. There is a section of 3 lines with no breaks. Few general suggestions first. One is to make sure that you don't play the left hand too strong. Those sections are usually marked in piano, so there is no need to kind of create a very tumultuous or dramatic character in the left hand. Plus, using of pedal later on with chords when the crescendo is happening, I think makes the sound already relatively strong considering how many notes we have in the bass. So try to make sure that you play relatively lightly. The second thing to consider is to make sure that both of your fingers or both sides of the hands are playing in an equal way. So for example, it's not that the fifth finger is kind of flopping around higher and the thumb isn't moving, or the other way around, that the thumb is moving and the fifth finger isn't working. So I think try to create a very even spacing for this. Yes, sometimes I ask students to hold the G note in the middle and basically tilt from note to note so that they can test how evenly they can distribute that movement. Finally, please consider that as you go faster, that size of the movement has to diminish. We won't be able to make very big movement when we go into the faster tempo. I think even if in a slower speed you want to practice this movement to be very clear, I would make sure that in a faster speed that is not exaggerated. Now, in terms of practicing itself, I think it's important to start slow, as with any music that you are learning, just to make sure that you start at the speed which is comfortable and it doesn't cause any pain or discomfort. I think that's really, really important. So for every person, that speed is going to be different. You should choose the one at which you can play most of those sections with very little to no tiredness if possible, and make this your baseline. So let's say if your current speed is, I don't know, 100, 120, whatever that might be, just start with that. Then execute some exercises, possibly in a slower tempo, and then try if the same tempo either feels more comfortable or moving on faster is appropriate and you feel that you are not getting tired. When executing this, it's also quite important to decide what to do with your wrist. Some pianists would prefer to lower the wrist so that this is an axis of playing, so kind of a little bit like this. So they will kind of sit a little bit lower. So that kind of helps us, at least in some cases. Other pianists prefer to do it with a higher wrist. I think that's possible as well. While others prefer to change the position of the wrist just to relax it. So keeping it in one position could cause tension and tiredness, while changing of positions sometimes helps to relax the hands. So they might start and they will do it, let's say, one bar on a downward movement, one on an upward movement. This can be distributed differently as well, so just see what works for you. I would also suggest to practice in groups of 4 notes or 8 notes first, so or going to the beginning of next group and then yes. And if you find that your hands can take black note octaves with the fourth finger, that might also help you relax the hand, simply because you are using different fingerings. So in those groups of 5 notes, so if you start from the beginning of the metric group to the beginning of the next one, try to feel that this is kind of like a one energy group without subdividing or without feeling that you are working so hard per every note. After some time, you can try to join those groups in groups of 8, so let's say entire bars, and eventually I would also suggest to practice all those exercises or approaches together with the right hand. Some of the more basic exercises like dotted rhythms, I personally think that they can be useful to make things more automatic, but only when your hand position and movement are already set to work in a fast tempo. If they are inappropriate, then making them even more automatic by applying rhythm exercises will basically teach you how to do an incorrect movement very well, but then again, that results in a rather tired hand. If you find that your hand is not very economical in its movements, so it jumps up too much between note to note, practicing very slow legato can also be helpful. So some pianists also suggest practicing just with fingers themselves, so just pressing with fingers themselves without making too much of that rotation movement. This can be useful as well, but I would expect that you can't produce very large dynamics this way because you're operating with very small levers in your hands. So this will have some use and it can maybe make your playing more efficient in some ways, but I think the way to play this place without tension and tiredness is to find some sort of middle ground, so a little bit of rotation as well as maybe some finger activity being employed in there as well. I hope this was helpful. Please let me know down in the comments if you are struggling with this place. This is commonly a challenging place, even for more advanced pianists, to not to get tired. But I think we need to plan this weeks in advance in terms of our improvement, not tackle the fastest tempos straight away. See our gradual improvements, so using metronome to get faster gradually and control whether at a new speed we can play with nice and relative freedom or whether we are getting tired. Maybe then it's worth staying at that speed for a little bit longer, practicing slower exercises, practicing in those groups of 4 or 8 notes, checking that the distance between fingers is always the one you expect, and then trying to move the tempo and staying in that tempo for as long as it takes before you move on further without actually getting tired. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing and I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.